Hello and welcome to the channel. Today we are talking about Battletech Extended 3025 and continuing the strategy guide to mech builds that I've been working on slowly but surely. This episode is going to cover heavy mechs, but more specifically heavy brawlers. I've decided to split the heavy category into two because heavies are so flexible, there's so much you can do with them, that trying to talk about everything all in one episode is just going to be too much. So today we'll do heavy brawlers. The very next one I do will cover ranged heavy mechs. So yeah, don't watch this and then go, oh, he's not talked about using PPCs or large lasers or any of that. Well, you know, we'll get to that, don't worry. But for now, we're going to talk about the brawlers, and as with the other videos, I've picked out mechs that are generally quite easy to get hold of in the Battletech Extended 3025 mod, so covering more common chassis for the most part, with a few that are slightly less common, but are also very good if you're lucky enough to get your hands on them. So let's start off looking at the Rifleman 3N. This is an incredibly common mech in this mod. And you will see plenty of these, more than enough, that this might well be your first full heavy mech. It's not that uncommon to have this as your first heavy mech, and it's a 60 tonner, so it's only just into the heavy category. Obviously the heavy category ranges from 60 to 75 tons, so we'll cover all those mechs within that bracket. But here's the Rifleman, and this is what I like to do with it. You've got 2 ballistic hard points, 4 energy hard points to work with. So, I mean, it's fairly flexible in terms of what you can do with it as a brawler. But for me, I like to go with an AC-10, which you might say, well, AC-10 is more of a long-range weapon. That's not so much of a brawl weapon. An AC-20 is definitely a brawl weapon, nice and short-range, close combat stuff. But yes, I agree, but I also consider the AC-10 flexible enough that it can go into either a long-range build or a shorter-range build. And what it comes down to for me is how much tonnage have I got to play with. And in a 60-ton mech, you don't have you don't have the tonnage really to fit a 20-ton, an AC-20 that weighs, what is it, like 14 tons, something like that? Let me just double check. Yeah, 14-ton weapon, plus, you know, my rule is for an AC-20, you require 3 tons of ammo with that, so, you know, 14, you know, you're adding 3 tons of ammo on top. It suddenly becomes very heavy for a 60-ton chassis. So, in this Brawl build, I go for an AC-10 instead, which is a little bit lighter. It's 2 tons lighter, plus you make another ton saving because you only need 2 tons of ammo, rather than the 3 that I would say you require for an AC-20 to see it through a full engagement. And then we just simply back that up with 4 medium lasers. If you've watched any of my other videos before, you'll know that in my opinion, medium lasers are absolutely fantastic short-range weapons. They're light, they only weigh a ton each, they've got reasonable range, they don't generate too much heat, it doesn't take too many heat sinks to support them and give yourself an ability to keep a sustained rate of fire up. They're amazing. So with this having energy slots after the ballistics, it just makes sense to me to go with the medium lasers backing that up, and it makes for a decent alpha strike. It's a good solid build for a 60-ton mech, and in my opinion it's probably one of the hardest hitting 60-tonners around. And with that AC-10 also providing a longer reach, it's kind of flexible to a degree as well. And you may have heard me talk about the AC-10 before, but if I haven't already mentioned this, there's something really awesome about AC-10s. If you can get a plus damage version, be it either +5 or +10, then if you hit someone in the cockpit with that, and they're out of cover, they've got no damage mitigation, that's a one-shot headshot kill weapon. So that's another awesome feature of the AC-10. But there you go. So we've just got 4 heat sinks, 4 medium lasers, AC-10, 2 tons of ammo. As you can see, all front and leg and arm locations maxed. Just strip the rear down a little bit, 50 on each side torso, 55 on the center. And you'll probably by now be aware that that's a common go-to amount of rear armor that I'll strip down to. Just frees up that little bit of extra tonnage, but without going too low that you become very, very vulnerable if something does get behind you. You don't want to drop your back armor too low with brawlers, because you know you're going to be a lot closer to the enemy and it doesn't take them much to get in your rear arc. And with this armor level, you can pretty much take getting shot in the back once. You can afford to mess up one time, get shot in the back without losing the mech or any equipment most of the time. But there's just one mistake that you can afford. So, you know, you do still need to be a little bit careful with your positioning, but I find these armor levels work out just fine. So that's the Rifleman 3N. And as I said, a very common heavy mech, possibly one of the first you'll find. Another heavy mech in the 60-ton bracket that I think is a decent grab is the Quickdraw 5A. Now, I'm not a massive fan of using jump jets too much, but I know lots of you out there do love your jump jet mechs, and so I picked out this as a mech that I think if you prefer a jump jetty style of play, this is a good one to go for, and not that hard to pick up either. You will see a reasonable number of these quick draws when you're going from the medium to the heavy stage of the game, and so therefore you're fairly likely to end up with one. Now, what I would normally do with this personally is I'd go for 6 medium lasers and I wouldn't bother with the jump jets so much. But as I said, this one I've picked out specifically for a jump jet build. So we've just gone with 5 medium lasers, which might not sound like a lot of firepower, but it's reasonable enough in light of the fact that you've got a maximum of 5 jump jets in this as well, which gives you a nice jump of 180 meters, which is further than it can move and shoot. So being able to jump that far and shoot is quite handy, particularly if you're kiting targets back towards the rest of your force, or wanting to jump over and get into the rear arc. 5 medium lasers into the rear of most mechs is more than sufficient damage to give them a hard time, open them up, and a second time of that quite possibly kill them as well, particularly if you're going for precision strikes. So yeah, 5 jump jets is the maximum this mech can take. It's got a good amount of heat sinks backing that up, because obviously jump jetting around is going to cause heat. So you need to be having enough heat sinks to keep that going, and that's one of the reasons why I haven't gone for the 6 medium lasers. It runs a little bit cooler with 5, and you can get an extra heat sink instead, which covers the use of your jump jets. Now, you might notice the rear armor on this is a little bit more risky low to make it work. So I've got 40, 40, and 45. And the legs are stripped down a tiny amount, just 1 pip off each leg, taking it down from 140 to 135 armor. But I feel that this is necessary to get the amount of jump jets and heat sinks that you're going to want to have in this mech to make it truly effective for what it's for. And yeah, with the jump jets, you should find that you can maneuver yourself pretty easily and make sure nothing's getting in your rear arc while still being able to fire as well. So it's a pretty flexible and useful jump jet build to have. And so that's the Quickdraw 5A. Let's move on to the next mech. So next, I've picked the Ostsol 4D, and Ostsols and Ostrocs are very common early on in the game, and I've gone for the Ostsol here because this particular one has the weapon slots that I like. Now, this has 6 energy hard points and 2 support weapon hard points. Now, unlike the Quickdraw, you can't put jump jets in it, but that's not a problem for me because I'm not really too fussed about having them. So what this has instead is the extra medium laser, plus 2 machine guns on top. And I have talked before about why I prefer the machine guns over small lasers or flamers. But for those that might not have seen that, I just find machine guns, they don't generate any heat. So although it takes extra tonnage to put some ammo in for them, I find it complements, you know, lasery builds or hotter builds quite nicely, because you're not adding to the heat that you've already got from your other weapon systems. So I find it's a good thing to have in for extra damage. And of course, in this mod, you can get improved versions of machine guns, which makes them ever more viable. And additionally, you can have half loads of machine gun ammo, which again makes it way more useful than it is in the vanilla game. So that's what we've gone for here. 2 machine guns and a half ton of machine gun ammo, which is more than enough to keep those going. You're not going to be firing them all the time. Back that up with 6 medium lasers, or rather they're backing up 6 medium lasers, which is very respectable firepower on any mech really, but works well for a 60-tonner. Bearing in mind 60-ton mechs, for the most part, apart from the Rifleman, tend to have quite a large engine, so you'll see from the movement blocks there that a lot of this mech is engine, so it's not like you can cram in too much firepower, but 6 medium lasers is more than good enough, and then the heat sinks to back it up. I think we have a total of 7 of those, which means it can keep firing. As you can see here, the heat efficiency is pretty damn good, and this makes for a decent brawler when you're just transitioning from that medium to the heavy period of your game. There are, of course, 50-ton mediums that you look at and go, well, I can make something better out of a 50-ton medium. And, of course, you're absolutely right. You can. But this will have slightly more armor and will be slightly faster. The 50-ton mediums that you can fit more firepower in will not be as quick. You know, they tend to have the slower engines. So if you want something that's going to be able to outmaneuver the enemy, move that much quicker, but have a little bit less firepower, then you can go for this. And of course, we've already talked about medium mechs, so if you're interested in that, go watch that video if you haven't seen it already. But you know, just talking about heavies, I don't want to compare too much and say, well, you know, don't bother with this because you can just take a Hunchback 4G. You know, let's not get into that, because some people might prefer this, or you might, you know, just encounter these before you even get a Hunchback 4P or a Centurion 9A, or, you know, you might find that you get one of these first, and you're going to want to know, how can I best make use of what I've got? So there you go. That's what I'd suggest. 6 medium lasers, 2 machine guns, bang. Good enough mech right there. So let's go on to the next one. And next, we've gone up to the 65-ton category, and I've picked out the Thunderbolt 5 SS. Now, there are many Thunderbolts, and who knows which one you're going to end up getting, but this is the one that, if I can go after this, this is the one that I'll try to get more than the others, because I think this has the best weapon hard points. That's the 5SS. So the reason being, because we've got a lot of energy hard points essentially, and as I've said before, if we're talking about short range, brawl range mechs, then I find the medium laser to be fantastic. So of course the first thing we've done with this build is you base it around 7 medium lasers, using every single one of those energy hard points. After that, it has 1 missile hard point and 2 support slots. So slap in an SRM6 as well, only requires 1 ton of ammo to keep that going, and then top it off with a couple of improved machine guns as well in this case, and a half ton of machine gun ammo. Again, that's more than enough ammo to keep those machine guns going for most engagements. The rear armor on this mech is a little bit higher than on the others as well, so we actually can have 60 armor on the side torsos and 65 on the center rear, and back it up with quite a large number of heat sinks. As you can see here, it's I think it's 11 heat sinks, 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, yeah. So that's actually quite a lot, and of course you don't have to fight every weapon system all the time in hot environments, and you'll find this can work very well. It's very sustainable. Watch, for example, if I lift up this SRM6, see how much more heat efficient it becomes. It's already very heat efficient, but watch this little bar here. Bang, there you go. So just by switching off the SRM6 in some fights, if you're in a hot environment, you can still keep firing those 7 medium lasers over and over, and of course the machine guns don't generate any heat at all. So it's actually a very decent, very efficient mech, and with good firepower as well. For 65 tons, that's a lot of damage. It's pretty much, I mean, if you've watched my medium thing, my absolute favorite medium mech is the Hunchback 4P. And I do my version with 7 medium lasers, and I think that's a fantastic build on its own. I could take that out against assaults and still be pretty happy with its firepower. This is very much like that. It's like a Hunchback 4PP plus. So you've got the 7 medium lasers plus an SRM6 for a bit of stability damage and extra hurt, plus the machine guns as well. So it's pretty good. I think this is, out of all the Thunderbolts, out of all the 65 tonners, I rate this one fairly highly. So if you can get your hands on one of those, build it like this, give it a try and see what you think. Right, yes, discard all changes. Alright, so next we've got the Jaeger mech. Now, there are a few different Jaeger mechs. There's the JM6A and the JM6B as well. And both of those have their uses. They are good, and I like them a lot, particularly the JM6A. However, it's not as common at least in my experience, as the JM6S. So this is the one I'm going to talk about in this case. So what we've got on this, again, remembering we're going for Brawl builds, so yes, you can build this for longer range. This I've gone for shorter range. So 4 medium lasers, good place to start for any short range mech. 4 machine guns this time. That's a lot of machine guns. So you want to get this right up close and personal to bring these machine guns into play and get those extra crits. One thing that's also not been mentioned about machine guns that makes them extra awesome is they have a good chance of causing pilot injuries by getting headshots, because they're spamming out so many individual shots. So 4 of these, really, this has the potential to be a bit of a headshot beast. Plus, as I said, you've got the 4 medium lasers, and of course the magic AC-10 with the improved damage. This can be a good headhunter. Granted, one you've got to get fairly close to use to its full potential, but it is very good at it if you can close the range. And you say, for example, you've got a pilot with at least 9 points in tactics, therefore giving you the cool shot mastery skill. You're going to have a much easier time of taking people's heads off with something like this, or causing enough pilot injuries to down a pilot, than you will with a lot of other things. So that's basically what I like to use this particular thing for. And as I said, of course, there are other ways to build this for a long range variant, but we're just looking at brawlers today. So that's what I'd recommend. AC-10 gives you a bit of flexibility at range as well. 4 medium lasers, 4 machine guns, 1 ton of ammo for the machine guns is more than enough to keep them going. And as usual, 2 tons of AC-10 ammo is what I recommend for an AC-10. It should give you 16 shots. Yep. And then we've just got 3 heat sinks backing it up. So it doesn't have a huge amount of heat sinks. May suffer in the hotter environments to a degree, because it'll find it, or lunar, for example, because 3 heat sinks won't lose your heat built up very quickly. But you've still got the 4 machine guns, so you can always fire those no matter how hot you get, because they don't generate any heat. So I think they're pretty awesome. Even in a hotter environment, you know, as long as you get close enough, you can make use of these. And if other mechs in your lance are opening up locations as well, these things are great for causing crits on exposed internals. So yeah, definitely a fun and good mech to use there, the Jaeger Max JM6S. So next, this is one of my absolute favorites. Now I'm not going to say it's the best, because there is a difference between what I would call my favorite and what I will consider the best in class for doing things, because, you know, I don't always just enjoy taking the absolute, you know, most overpowered cheese mechs possible, but this I really enjoy as a mech. It's the SRM thing again. I really am a massive fan of SRM spam. I find it a lot of fun to play with. So this is the Bombardier 10D. Also fairly common. Not too hard to get hold of 1 or 2 of these as you play your career. And this is what I like to do with it. Pretty straightforward. Just 5 SRM6s. Now this mech, it has 5 missile hardpoints and 2 support slots. I don't use the support slots. We just cram this full of SRM6s. Obviously, the stock variant of this, it's a long range support mech ideally, but honestly, throw that out the window, because this makes a far better brawler in my opinion. It's absolutely awesome in the heavy category. So 5 SRM6s is a pretty disgusting amount of firepower, to be honest. Of course, these are all at +4 damage, so they're improved ones, but a max damage of 360, a max stability damage of 114 at the moment. If I was to improve these other 3 with extra +2 stability damage as well, of course that gets even better. So that's pretty much what this is for, really, is just causing huge amounts of stability damage as well as tearing off huge chunks of armor. Now, it's going to spread the damage around a lot more than other weapon systems, because it is missiles, it's to be expected, but it just does so much damage that doesn't really matter. You will rip things to shreds with this. It's an absolutely fantastic mech. And we've got plenty of ammo here as well, with 5 tons of SRM ammo, 1 ton for each weapon system. I think that gives you more than enough to get through even some of the longer engagements. And yeah, so this is one of my absolute favourites. We've got 4 heat sinks backing it up, the usual levels of rear armour, and just a little bit stripped off each leg. But yeah, it's great fun. If you've never tried this with this build loadout, try it. It's amazing. Okay, on to the next. So next, we've got the Warhammer 6D. Quite a fan of this, and again, Warhammers are pretty common. This particular variant is not the most common Warhammer variant. The 6R is the most common, but if you fight Davian enough, so take contracts against the Federated Sons, House Davian, you will eventually get enough bits for one of these. This is their particular variant, as far as I know, and this is what I go for in this. So this is it's a brawler, but it's a brawler with a little bit of flexibility. So you've got 2 large lasers, giving you a little bit of reach and poke ability, and you back that up with 4 medium lasers, and again, like the Jaeger, 4 machine guns, and this becomes very effective again at picking off heads and causing crit damage, and just generally being really nasty close up. Big fan of this. And yeah, a little bit lower on the back armor again than some, a little bit lower than I usually like to go, but it's worth it for the extra firepower. Now, you could look at this and say, well, you could replace those large lasers with medium lasers, but then you end up actually not being able to use all your tonnage, or you'll have like a bajillion heat sinks that you simply don't need. So that's why those large lasers go in spite of this being a brawler, and of course they do give a nice bit of extra punch. Plenty of heat sinks in this build as well. I think it's a total of 9 heat sinks, so does not have problem losing heat in hot environments. Copes well with lunar environments as well, so it's got a bit of range to poke out, and it's got the machine guns for when it's too hot, and you know, a lot of heat sinks for having the ability to lose heat that's been built up. So yeah, Warhammer 6D, my favourite Warhammer variant, I'd say, because I do like the ones with the lots of energy hard points. So 6 energy hard points for support, I think is a good mech, good flexible options available there due to the hard points. So next, let's have a look at the Archer 2R. Now, anyone that's played this mod and played it for long enough will know that archers are one of the most common heavy mechs around. You will see a lot of archers, and so therefore it's not surprising that I've picked this out as one that you're going to get hold of and you're going to be able to use. Now again, I am aware that the Archer is primarily a long-range missile boat, but just because it comes like that as stock doesn't mean that that's what you've got to do with it. That's one of the joys of Battletech, is you can build things however you like, and of course we're looking at short-range brawler builds here, so this is what I do with an Archer. So again, working off the basis of 4 medium lasers. It's got 5 energy hard points. I find trying to use the 5th is a little bit too much. It ends up a little bit too hot. So just go for the 4 medium lasers, and then it has 3 missile hard points, and we use up all of those with SRM6s. So the build becomes 3 SRM6s, 4 medium lasers. You've got 3 tons of SRM ammo, again 1 for each SRM6, and a whole buttload of heat sinks as well. So what have we got here? We've got 4, 8, 10, 11, sorry, 8, 9, 10. Apparently I can't count. So 10 heat sinks, and that is more than enough again to keep this build going. You see the heat efficiency is good, and the damage output is also very respectable. It's a bit of a mixed loadout, so you've got the kind of more pinpoint accuracy of the medium lasers, but you've also got the spready damage, but comes with stability damage of the SRM6s. So it's a nice kind of all-round brawl style. It's not headhunter, it's not a full stability damager, but it's a bit of both, which can complement other mechs in your lance nicely. So that's the Archer 2R, and yeah, you're going to have plenty of these. You're not going to have a hard job finding them. Right, next we have the Marauder 3R. Again, you will see plenty of these. It's actually quite common. Some of the Marauder variants are pretty rare. This one is not, and it's a pretty easy one to make into a brawler if that's what you choose. Again, I know that there are plenty of good range builds you can make out of this, but for this this episode, we're just looking at close combat. So what I've gone with here, this is the first one where I put an AC-20 in it. This is a 75-ton heavy, and it has more than enough tonnage spare at this level to start working around AC-20s. And so we've got an AC-20 backed up by 4 medium lasers again. Hits pretty damn hard. 3 tons of AC-20 ammo, and then we've got 6 heat sinks as well. Again, rear armor stripped a little bit lower than I like to go. Normally 50 is where I prefer it to be, but we've gone down to 45 and down to 130 on the legs. So we stripped off a fair amount on the legs just to get this AC-20 in, but it is worth it, particularly if you've got an improved damage AC-20. So you're doing 120 damage per round fired, and also plus an extra 20 stability damage, giving it a total of 60 stability damage, which is a lot from one weapon system. It's pretty damn good. Great mech, good chassis, good weapons loadout as well, and making use of almost all of its hard points. So this comes with 2 ballistic hard points, 4 energy hard points, and we've used the 4 energy, and just one of the ballistics is enough. A single AC-20 is more than enough to get you through a close range fight. And so that's the Marauder 3R, and I recommend this build for that. Okay, next we have the Orion 1V, and this is one of my favorites. I'm a big fan of the Orion. Again, that doesn't mean it's the best mech. It just means I like how it looks. I like what you can do with it. And this is, to me, this is like a mini Atlas to a degree. So we can get, well, a mini Atlas Brawler anyway. So we can get an AC-20 in it. We can get 2 SRM6s and an SRM2 on top. Although with 3 weapon hard points, you can switch that up how you like. You could, you know, take 1 6 and 2 4s if you prefer. Whatever, doesn't really matter. As long as you come to the same total, it all works fine. But yeah, so this is very good for stability damage, as well as, you know, just generally hurting things. Now the ammo, it's just 2 tons of ammo, because 1 ton for each SRM6 is fine, and then we've just got an SRM2 on top of that, so we don't need a whole extra ton of ammo just to provide shots for this SRM2. It'll be fine. So this works out nicely. Only 1 heatsink though, so it's not one to use in the hotter environments. This is one to use in tundra or polar environments, because the heat efficiency is not amazing, but the damage is. So in those environments where you can get away with it, take one of these out and it will make mincemeat of almost anything in front of it. Very, very nice mech. Again, same with the stripping of the armor. A little bit lower than I usually like to go on the back, but it's just so you can squeeze that extra little bit of firepower out of it. And I think it ends up being worth it. As long as you play safe enough and don't let things get in behind you, you're just going to melt stuff. And particularly, you know, if you focus firing, your lancers backing each other up well, you're going to knock down target after target very easily if you've got a lot of high damage output mechs. And yeah, this I just love it. I love how it looks. I liked playing one of these in MechWarrior Online as well, so I've got a bit of a soft spot for the old Orion. But there it is. All right, what we got next? Yes, now Stalkers, Stalker 4P. So, you know, you'll be used to the Stalker being an assault mech, but in lore there is also the Stalker 4P, which shows up in this Battletech Extended 3025 mod as a heavy mech. So it's 10 tons lighter than its usual self, and they are pretty common. You will see a lot of these mechs. You will probably see more of these mechs than you will of Orions or Marauders or Warhammers even in some cases. So expect to rack up a few of these throughout your campaign. And I've done a couple of builds because they're so common. I've done a couple of different things with these. You've got, as I see it, 2 major options in terms of Brawl builds for this. And again, of course, there are long range builds for this aplenty, and we will look at those in the next video, but for now, Brawlers. So this, you might be looking at this and go, well, you've got 3 large lasers in that. That's not really a Brawler, is it? And yeah, I'm with you. I know large lasers are long range weapons, but what this is this is a headhunter again. So you're just cramming in as many laser weapons as possible, and to use the tonnage and make it efficient fully, I think it's worth upgrading to large lasers here. I'll show you the next build and you'll see there is a difference, but this one we've got 8 energy hardpoints to work with, 3 missile hardpoints, 2 support slots, and so what this works around is just using the energy hardpoints. So we've got 2 medium lasers in that arm, 2 in the other arm, 1 in the left torso, and then back it up with 3 large lasers as well. And that gives us quite a serious punch. I mean, of course, these are all plus 10 damage versions, so take that into account, but the max damage here is 325, which is pretty respectable, and also packs a heck of a lot of heat sinks, which will keep this running in almost any environment. And again, you can just, you know, switch a large laser off here or there and keep firing pretty much for infinity. It's a very heat efficient build because of all these heat sinks. But yeah, it's good for precision strikes aimed at the head because it's got 8 weapon systems. So you've got 8 chances of scoring that headshot, which is pretty damn good. So yeah, I like this for a headhunter, and also, of course, obviously with the large lasers, it is more flexible than most brawlers because 3 large lasers is actually pretty good for ranged damage anyhow. So, you know, I will build medium snipers, or in some case heavy snipers, with 3 large lasers. So yeah, it's pretty good, it's pretty flexible. The downside to the Stalker 4P is, of course, like the assault version of it, it's very slow. It doesn't get a faster engine for being a heavy variant. It's just going to be slow, but that means you can fit these extra weapon systems in compared to other 75-ton heavies. This is the one that will fit the most weapons, but you know, you pay for it in speed. So let's have a look at the other Stalker version that I build. This one is the one that I would say I prefer because this is an absolute beast in terms of damage. So again, I've got improved weapon systems in here, plus 10 damage lasers, plus 4 damage SRM6s. So this comes up to a total of 496 damage when you alpha strike this, and that's monstrous. Really, really big. And yeah, also backed up with an absolute massive pile of heat sinks. So again, this is 8 medium lasers using every single energy hardpoint up, and also using up all of the missile hardpoints with 3 SRM6s. Very straightforward to build. Again, 3 tons of SRM ammo, 1 ton for each system. Very straightforward to build. Very, very devastating to enemy mechs. This, if you probably, like I said, end up with multiple Stalker 4Ps throughout your career if you play it long enough. And yeah, set yourself one of these up and it's going to be devastating. If you've got more than one of these, you're going to laugh your way through a lot of assault mechs with this amount of firepower. You might not have the armor levels that they have, but you've got the firepower of any good assault mech right here in this 75-ton heavy. It's devastatingly good. So strongly recommend giving that a try if you've never used this this particular build on a Stalker 4P for brawling. Now you might think, well, movement, it's so slow. Why on earth would you want to make a brawler out of a mech that's so slow? Well, give it a try. You'll see. You will get it into brawl range. You will be able to use it more than often enough to justify its existence. Don't just look at it and go, oh, that's too slow to be a brawler, no point. Actually try it. You'll find plenty of opportunities to give this thing you know, chance to let rip with its full alpha, and when it does, you'll not want to put it down. You'll realize, oh, okay, this is worth it. It's worth spending that extra round plodding it forward to catch up with the rest, or holding the rest of your lance back while this moves into position, because once it's there, it's just devastating. So yeah, give that a try. Stalker 4P, Brawler build, 8 medium lasers, 3 SRM6s. Loads of fun. Right, next. We're on to mechs that are less common soon, but there's one more to look at before we go on to the less common ones, and that is the Grasshopper 5H. Now, it's not perhaps as common as, say, the Archers or the Rifleman or whatever, but they do show up fairly often, I find, the Grasshoppers, and yeah, with it being a mech from the vanilla, most of you probably already know how you like to build a Grasshopper and what you think's good about it, but I'm going to tell you what I like to do with it anyhow. And what I like to do is make it a really devastating brawler with medium lasers and machine guns and jump jets as well. It's one of those mechs that, although I say, you know, I'm not a massive user of jump jets, this is a mech that I feel really wants to have jump jets in it to get, you know, full effectiveness out of it. So we've got the medium lasers here. So we've got 7 medium lasers in total. So once again, like the Thunderbolt, like the Hunchback 4P, 7 medium lasers is already a devastating amount of firepower for most mechs. It's a good amount of damage. But then on top of that, we're throwing in 6 machine guns. And again, if you can get the improved plus 50% crit, plus 2 damage machine gun variants and put those into every slot, you've got a huge amount of damage out of this. So again, bear in mind I've got plus damage weapons in every hard point here, but with that, the total firepower, if you're firing everything at once in an alpha strike, is 395. So it's not as mental as the Stalker 4P, but it's crazy enough. And if you jump over someone's head and precision strike this into the rear of virtually any mech in the game, you've got to be pretty unlucky not to kill that in one. This is an absolutely devastating build, and again, you need those jump jets so you can jump over stuff, get in their rear arc, jump yourself about. You're going to build up heat doing it, granted, but even if you do, just a round of not firing your medium lasers and just fire your machine guns or just reposition, you'll lose that heat fairly quickly, because it does back this build up with a lot of heat sinks as well. So I think this is, again, 10 heat sinks in this build, and that's more than enough for almost any environment to be able to drop a good amount of heat. But yeah, it's this has long been one of my favourite mechs, and it still is, even with the vast variety that there is in Battletech Extended 3025. I still love this mech because of its crazy amount of firepower, and with this mod it only gets even better now that there are improved machine guns to play with. So yeah, absolutely love it. Another thing that works well with this mod is previously I would build it with 2 tons of machine gun ammo, which meant having to lose a heat sink and jig things about a bit. But now with this mod having 0.5 tons of machine gun ammo, I think 1.5 tons is enough. You don't get to use these machine guns every round. You're not using them constantly. So although you can run yourself out of ammo if you are using the machine guns a lot, more times than not, 1.5 tons will be enough to see you through a fight. And even if you run out, you've still got 7 medium lasers. That's great firepower, so it's good enough. So yeah, that's the Grasshopper 5H. Absolutely love it. Really recommend trying that build if you haven't already, although I'm pretty sure a lot of you have already discovered the joy of machine guns and grasshoppers, right? If you haven't lived. Right, let's go on to the more rare variants now. So I'll start with the Catapult A1. So like I said, not as common as some of these other mechs we've talked about, but if you do manage to get hold of one of these, I'll tell you why I love it, and it's because it's got 4 missile hardpoints, and I'm a big fan of missiles. So we've got 2 energy hardpoints and 2 support weapon slots as well, and pretty straightforward. You could probably guess what I would have done with this before you even saw it, but yeah, 4 SRM6s, 2 medium lasers, and 2 machine guns. You're actually using every single weapon hardpoint on this mech. 4 tons of ammo is plenty. 0.5 ton of machine gun ammo, plenty for just 2 machine guns. And then we've got 5 heat sinks. So again, not the most heat efficient build, not one that I would take out in a lunar environment necessarily. Probably not even a desert. I mean, you can get away with it in a desert, just don't fire the medium lasers too much. But generally this is one that I would enjoy using in either a neutral environment or tundra or polar, for example. And if you do take it out in those environments, it's devastating. So again, let's look at the firepower. 408 is the alpha strike damage of this if you're getting those machine guns in range as well, and that's loads, absolutely tons for a 65 ton mech. That is a heck of a lot of damage. And again, it's not a pinpoint head shooter. It's not going to be stripping off precise locations. It will do a bunch of stability damage, and it will just wreck mechs generally all over. Yeah, if that's how you like to play, give this a try. It's great fun. Right, on to the next mech, and that is the Archer 2W. So We've already looked at the Archer 2R, and that's pretty common. It has 5 energy hardpoints and 3 missile hardpoints. Now, the difference with the 2W is you've got 6 energy hardpoints and 4 missile hardpoints. Now, those of you that know your lore will recognise the 2W as a Wolf's Dragoons variant, and that is exactly what it is. So it's quite rare, difficult to find, although out of all the Wolf's Dragoons mechs in this mod, either it's been pure luck or I don't know, or perhaps they're a little bit more common than other variants, but this Archer 2W is the one I always seem to find in my playthroughs. So I thought it was worth including because I always seem to end up with one, and it's a good mech to play with. So again, very similar to the Catapult A1 build in that it's 6 SRM6s and 2 medium lasers, only unlike the Catapult, it doesn't have those support weapon slots, and so you're a little bit lower firepower, but you're a lot more heat efficient. So if you look at this heat efficiency, whereas the Catapult I'd say I'd only use in neutral or colder environments, this one I'd use in any environment. This one's fine, you know, this will keep going because it's got the extra heat sinks. I mean, also with it being 5 tons heavier, it's got a bit more armor too, so it's a tougher mech, only slightly, but it has got very good rear armor values for my builds anyway. 65 across all locations on the rear is actually pretty good. Yeah, I recommend giving this a try if you're not so good at positioning and things get behind you more often and you take damage to the back, or you're doing a lot of missions in hot environments. Give this one a run instead of the A1. But as I said, don't expect that you will see one of these or a whole one of these every single playthrough, but you know, because it is a rarer mech, but they are findable, and I've found this across multiple careers, so I thought it was worth including. And it's also cool to be able to show off a Wolf's Dragoons mech variant as well. So there you go, that's the Archer 2W. Right, and last but by no means least, we have the Black Knight. Now again, Black Knight, it's a vanilla mech, so you'll have seen it before. You'll have ideas what you like to do with it already. So you know, don't worry if I'm teaching you how to suck eggs here. If you've already heard all of this before, but not everybody does have a good idea of how to make best use of mechs. So in this mod in Battletech Extended 3025. The Black Knight is actually quite rare, so that's why I've put it in alongside the 2W and the Archer 2W and the Catapult A1. So yeah, this is quite rare. You won't see it all the time, but if you do enough assassination missions, I find you'll eventually end up with a whole one of these, maybe even a couple throughout a long enough playthrough. So I thought I'll include this because the Black Knight is a great mech. It's got 8 energy hardpoints, 3 support weapon hardpoints. It is a classy laser boat, and that is the way to build it in my opinion. So now this also I wanted to include because it bucks the trend of my usual set of rules for support weapons, which is, you know, I normally go with machine guns for my support slots if I have them, but not on this. I actually use the small lasers on this, and I'll explain why. So we've got obviously 8 medium lasers in this build. Use every single available energy hardpoint on medium lasers. Unfortunately, the headshot is a shared slot, so we've got energy hardpoint and support hardpoint in the head. Obviously, use the energy hardpoint over the support one, in my opinion. You get more damage out of your energy weapons than you do support weapons, plus they have longer range. But the other 2 support slots are in the side torsos, so we use those for the small lasers. Now, this is obviously a pretty devastating head shooter. Close range, granted, but you know, you've got a total of 10 weapon systems in this, which gives you a pretty reasonable chance that one of them will hit the head if you're going for a precision strike. Sometimes 1 or 2, you know. So and 2 or 3 rounds of deliberately going precision strike for something's head, you can always guarantee you will kill it through a headshot with this kind of loadout. But yeah, so you can see here this has got absolutely piles of heat sinks. And this makes it very, very heat efficient in almost any environment. Now, you can see the Alpha Strike generates a lot of heat. It's generating 108 heat, but we're heat sinking 81 of that heat. And of course, you're not firing these small lasers all the time, just when you get close enough. So as I've showed you many times before, if you were to remove these, you'll see, you know, the bar pop up. If I remove both of them, it pops up even more. So most of the time this mech is running very heat efficient. You can use it in any environment. It works really well. The total damage with improved weapon systems in it is 340, which is pretty damn respectable. But as I said, you don't need massive alpha strikes when it comes to having a headhunter mech. You just need lots of weapon systems that aren't missiles, if that makes sense. And this, you know, this fits the bill. Obviously the Grasshopper will do that job better, what with all the 6 machine guns on top of 7 medium lasers. Of course the Grasshopper makes a fantastic headhunter, but this will do as well, and has a bit more armor than the Grasshopper, and more heat sinks as well. So it lacks the jump jet, so you're not going to be getting in behind stuff and backshotting as easy as the Grasshopper will, but it doesn't need to. This can plow through the front of things quite happily. Now, as I said, I get on to explaining why I use the small lasers instead of the machine guns here, and it's pretty obvious if you haven't worked it out already. It's just that this build has a massive pile of heat sinks just from the off to support these medium lasers, and it's got more than enough heat sinks that I can actually afford to support 2 small lasers on top without it actually debilitating the mech build at all. So I don't need to use machine guns is the short version. I can afford these small lasers, and I've got more than enough heat sinks and therefore heat efficiency that it copes. So yeah, and also it fits. It just wouldn't feel right to have a Black Knight and then slap machine guns in it for me. I think a Black Knight should be an energy boat, and that's what this is, and it works well as that. So that was the last of the heavy brawlers that I wanted to talk about. Hopefully that's given you some ideas of how to build mechs. Obviously, I've said before in the other videos, I'll say again, this is just how I like to play. There are many ways to play this game. There's no real right or wrong way. As long as you are succeeding in your missions and beating the game, then you're probably doing something right. So don't take this as me saying, oh, this is the only way to do stuff, I'm right and your ideas are wrong. No, I'm not saying that at all. What I'm telling you is this is how I like to play. This is what I find to be very, very effective at beating the game. And if you're someone that's a little bit short on ideas, or new to the game, or the mod, or struggling a bit with like, oh, I want to play this style, but I can't quite figure out how to best get the mech builds I want, then, you know, use this as a guide for ideas. You know, if you haven't got any of your own, try these. Or perhaps one of these builds will spark an idea of your own that you think, oh, well, actually, I like that, but I want to change that weapon system and that weapon system for this and this, and then I like it better. You know, do that, feel free. And I'd love to hear what kind of things you guys use in the comments, what you make of it. If you try any of these builds, let me know, you know, which of them end up being your favorites, which are the most effective in your mind. Always interesting to know what you guys are up to and what you're enjoying, or even what you're not, to a degree. But I prefer to hear the positive stuff, of course. But yeah, so that's it for now for the Brawlers. I hope you learned something from that, and if you didn't, look out for the next video. Maybe you'll learn something from that. But yeah, I do love the Brawl style of play in this game, and obviously the lights and the mediums are more suited to shorter range fights, in my opinion, in this game. Once you get into the heavy and assaults, you can make some seriously scary longer range builds. However, with the heavy category, there is still a massive amount of choice in terms of the short range fight, and they're not so slow that you can't get in there and do damage close up before taking too much yourself. So I do think it's a good use of a lot of chassis. Now, when we look at the long range heavies, there will be some overlaps between these chassis, because some of them are just flexible enough that you can do one thing or another with them depending on what mood you're in, you know. But there will be some different chassis in there as well, so look out for that. That will be coming hopefully soon. But I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, or you found it useful, give it a thumbs up, please, because that really helps spread the channel. It really helps me out and helps give me an idea of whether anyone is enjoying what I'm doing or not. And yeah, and follow the channel, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this. I do, of course, stream on Twitch regularly. I do Battletech is 3 days a week at the moment, so if you're into it and you want to see the latest, obviously Urban Warfare expansion has come out. I'm playing Urban Warfare, and also the Battletech Extended 3025 mod has been updated to be compatible with that now. So I'm going to be playing Battletech Extended with Urban Warfare on top, and it's going to be awesome. I'm looking forward to that. Should be starting a new series today. Yeah, check it out if you want to see what I'm up to and see me in action doing stuff live, and if you want to see how these builds work, because I end up using various ones of these builds in my playthroughs. If you think, well, yeah, it's all very well just sitting there talking about all this and saying this is good, but I want to see you prove it, come and watch my live streams on Twitch. You will see them in action, and you'll get a good idea of whether you like them or not. All right, thanks again for watching, everyone, and I hope to see you in the next video.